APV. There's a lot of producers, the members of the FAPAE board, but the president of the JEDA is with us as well, who's sitting amongst you, and very little else. And as is usual, every year, you know that today we present a memoir of the last financial year. We're not going to give you details, but I know that it's helpful for you. I would like to say, Mira Ortega, the last year's figures appear on the website of the FAPAE of the year 2013. As regards to this year, it's always much more interesting to talk about what we're doing this year, albeit we've said it. I want to thank Rebordinos and the festival, because we believe that the presence of Spanish cinema continues to be very significant in figures as well as, and in all of the sections. We've got Spanish cinema in all of the sections of the film festival. Specifically, more than 40% of the films that are going to be seen in this film festival are Spanish films, or co-production, or co-produced by Spain. We've got 15 Spanish films in the main sections, the officials, Zabaltegui, new directors. And as I was saying, more than 40% of the films that will be seen in this film festival. So I want to thank you very much to the selection committee, that is to say that they're going the right way. And another piece of information, which is usually very interesting for you, and sometimes we provide it, how this financial year is going, 2014. And more specifically, with data dating to the 21st of September 2014, we have got a market share of 23.6%, the highest in its history before finishing the year, before the year's over, because let's run the risk. We think we might end up at 25%. There are still some important films that have to be premiered, some that are being presented in this film festival, and some others that will be presented. And we believe that we will be over 25% as a market share in 2014, bearing in mind the economic situation and all the budget cuts that have been taken place or being carried out. Imagine the average budget of the films in 2009 was 3.2 million euros. The average budget has dropped down to 1.3 million euros this year. And even having said that, their presence in this festival, and we hope to achieve 25% by the end of the year. Very little more that I want to add. We believe that 25, La Isla Mínima, which was premiered last Saturday in this film festival, Torrente 5, Rec 3, Mortadelo and Filemón, and other films that are in this festival. The L'Oreac, another film that is being premiered at the end of October. Lasa in Zabala will also be premiered in October, and we hope that we will achieve that 25%. That's all I wanted to say. I'm going to give the floor now to the president of FAPAE, Ramón Colom. Thank you very much, Josean. It's a pleasure to have a presenter who is the vice president of FAPAE, which is Jose Portela, who is one of the two presidents of the two Basque Production Association, and he's actively working, and he's very discreet, but the film of Lasa y Zabala, which is present in this film festival, is a production of his, and that I recommend you watch it, because I've had the opportunity to see it, and I hope it will be enormously successful and will increase the 25% and go higher than 20%. There's another film, because that's the way things stand. There's the Spanish-Argentinian co-production of Relatos Salvajes, or Wild Stories, which has been operating in Argentina from an audience standpoint, is being very, very successful, and it's quite possible that exactly the same thing will happen here. Before we were talking about La Isla Mínima. I'm not going to talk about it because the critique you've read the critiques after the successful projection last Saturday, Torrente 5 or 5 is about to come out, R4, Mortadelo, Filemón, Laza y Zavala, Los Relatos Salvajes, and also there are other or more titles, but that may operate. And this takes me to say something that I believe to be very interesting. You know that FAPAE normally appears twice a year, one in San Sebastian, which is absolutely compulsory, another one in the Malaga Film Festival dedicated to Spanish cinema, where more or less we present our political vision of the film industry. For us and for me, I'm very glad to be here in this press conference because there's a change in format. You've probably noticed that Spanish TV is not here. And there's a meaning, and I'll tell you why, and you will be able to understand that a bit later on, because we will explain it to you. And I tell you now, and this allows us as well to explain the plurality of the FAPAE producers. The vice president is Basque, and within the Confederation, we've got Catalonia through Proa, and if it could have been here, we would have also had José Antonio Félez, who is the president of AEC, which is AEC, who are the producers that are strictly cinema producers that united one of the associations that make up the FAPAE. We are pluralistic in our approach. We have different ways of seeing things, but there's something that we would like to say from the outset, and that is that, for example, we are happy, very happy, of the current situation of Spanish cinema. You might think that I've gone crazy and that I've drank, how can I say? And then in the odd days that I'm saying that we're very happy, and on the even days we criticize the problems that we're encountering. Well, cinema and we make mistakes at times when we think about this, can be seen in the cinema theaters. We can see it, and on the screens. More and more so, we have to change that criterion. Cinema, the stories that the producers make with the Spanish creators and outside of Spain are seen in the cinema theaters, but also on the screens on home TVs, TV screens through TV, through video on demand, VOD. That is to say, there are more and more systems through which we can entertain ourselves, how we can enjoy watching cinema. And the first thing I would like to set forth or state is that we've managed to achieve some of you people that call as commercial cinema, and I like it to call it popular cinema. Popular cinema doesn't mean that it has to be poor cinema. Well, you've got a film of La Isla Mínima that we saw on Saturday. It's a film which has a very high quality, and it aspires to be popular cinema, and to whom we've got to welcome and congratulate them for. But popular cinema is also El Niño and Ocho Apellidos Vascos, and Cine Popular are many of the titles that we have in our industry. We've managed for there to be a popular cinema, and we've managed that the audiences throughout Spain can see and watch the cinema that is produced here. We've taken off that title of it's a Spanish typical film that quite often has accompanied us negatively. Popular cinema, and I'm seeing Enrique Cerezo, who is a producer, the Witches of Zugarramurdi that we saw here last year, and it's had a long trajectory through many countries, and that's quite clear. Spanish popular cinema has re-encountered and has found the Spanish audience again, and that's frankly quite good. But it hasn't done it at the cost of other types of cinema. It just simply, they get along together. There is a Catalan 10,000 kilometers, a Catalan film which is being shown in one of these sections of the festival. It was premiered in the United States. There's a type of cinema that aspires to have perhaps another way or another type of audience. And that's very important. Quite often when the authorities say, well, why don't we do just popular type cinema? Pedro Almodóvar now is popular nowadays because when he made, and this festival took him in, he's Pepe Lucy Boom, who I saw in one of the cinema theaters in the festival. There's no popular cinema unless it goes through the work to develop that way of working. Emilio Martinez Lázaro, who yesterday I saw in the corridor in the Maria Cristina Hotel, if you remember, he made a film that was called Las Palabras de Mask, produced by Elias Querejeta, that we could say was an art-type film, but it was a tough film. But what's quite sure that it has nothing to do with the Ocho Apellidos Vascos, which he has just made. Both are just as good, but they both have a different style. So therefore, we say this, we are happy, we're very happy with how cinema's going. And then I will add something else. Cinema's going because it's going well. But when we read that we want to hold a conference, of cinema conference, was what? To talk about what? Because otherwise we don't understand why cinema in its relationship with the audience, that who it's destined to, is going well. What's going very badly or poorly is the cinema industry, and it's going poorly is why, because a lot of things aren't fulfilled, albeit that we have also good news that we're going to tell you about later on. A good piece of news, for example, is the sentence or the proposal of the Supreme Court of sending to Strasbourg, or to Brussels, sorry, the issue of private copying. When the royal decree was passed of private copies on the 30th of December, if I don't recall, I'm not mistaken, we thought that was hideous. Spain at that time was the first decision taken by the government of the president, Mariano Rajoy, decided to create a unique and single system, an exceptional system, that did not guarantee the right of the title holders, and amongst them the audiovisual producers, to be paid as occurs in the rest of Europe. The Spanish government said that it was going to get rid of that money where the DVDs were recorded, those artifacts, or that the recording equipment of videos and DVDs. And as a result of that, what happened was the Spanish producers received and redistributed through private copies 115 million euros that would allow us to work to all of us. And those 150 million euros, the government, in a very pilgrim type idea, decided to change it, to leave it and reduce it down to 5. From 115 million to 5 million, and plus the law, which was even more horrible, or more ironic, the law, instead of allowing those who were charging to the manufacturers of virgin DVDs, to the manufacturers of recording equipment and so on, decided that no, that they weren't going to pay, but it was going to be paid by all of the citizens in the country through the general state budget. But the equipment manufacturers, did they drop the price of the prices? The DVD producers, did they drop the price of the DVDs? No. So therefore, we are giving them, as a gift, a significant amount of money, and we tax our citizens with those 5 million euros. Now the government, all of these legal issues addressed vis-a-vis the Supreme Court, has decided that the European High Court of Justice will have to say, well, tell us what the law says exactly, that we want to apply it. And the European law doesn't say the same as that occurrence of the 30th of December by the Spanish government. For us, that is a good piece of news. And we say this in front of you, and we're very happy because of that piece of news, well, we've still got a year and a half to do all the transactions and negotiations at a court level, but for us, that's a good piece of news. Why? It's a good piece of news, and I will relate this to the second point, well, for one reason, and that is because laws, and we listen to the government say this quite often, and practically in everything which refers to the Catalonian 9th of November referendum, they say the law's there to be complied to, and we add that that's true. The laws are there to be complied, but all of the laws that are passed, okay? And that all of the laws, we're going to also include those of the aid, or where we foresee the aid provided to audiovisual producers. We should have gotten the money in March this year, and it's almost October, that aid of the films that were produced and that were premiered in 2012. Premiered in 2012 means that the producers started to spend money in 2010. And therefore, any delay means a lack of profits being achieved because of that delay has to be refinanced. Where in October, we've not received the money yet, and the year before, or yesterday, Monday, there was a call for the decree was published by the Ministry for Culture in order to pay for that aid to be received. There is a problem. That's the problem. We have to say it clearly. That's the current situation of our country, of the industry, and also of the administration. The serious problem is that of the 39 million that has to be paid, the government, and this has to be recognized, the government had foreseen zero to pay that. And now, after an enormous amount of effort where there's been intervention of the Ministry for Culture, the Minister for Culture, the Secretary of State, and the Ministry for Tax and the Vice Presidency of the government, after that enormous effort, 32.5 million have emerged. We still lack 6. 6 is still missing, 6 million, and we have, and that's also a good piece of news, the commitment by the government of trying to find the money which still has to be paid, but we don't have the guarantee that they will manage to achieve those 6 million that are necessary to complement those payments. So therefore, good news that we've got 32. The government has found them somewhere, a special loan by the Ministry for Tax. We want to thank them, but we want to remind you that we're still missing 5 or 6 million, and that we have to find them. They are necessary, because otherwise, if we don't, serious problems will arise. And therefore, I doubt very much that a bank, whatever bank that finance our films, will continue to finance us if one of the pillars of the system says, hey, I'm very sorry, we've not got money, we're going to not participate. That can't be the case. That doesn't work, and this is also going to influence upon the decisions that other bodies may take, like the Society for Reciprocal Guarantee, Audiovisuals, RGN. We have to resolve this problem, we believe, and we're in a type of a honeymoon, basically, with the Ministry for Culture, and the relationship is frankly quite good. That's the way it is, but we have not resolved at present the entire problem. Or we almost have it resolved. We almost have it. But I would ask the ministry to manage to obtain that objective, to avoid prorating. There's another issue which is clearly shows that we're doing very well. The Minister for Culture last Saturday here in San Sebastian, we said that we're very tired, sick and tired of spending the whole year claiming and asking for the money that you owe us. We can't. Our job consists in to make productions, and our job consists in to make the system go ahead. Let's resolve it for once and for all. That solution will be to simultaneously pay the previous years and to start up the new system as a result of the conversations that we've held in the mixed commission meetings, where we want them to be forwarded. And we want that money to be forwarded mainly because of this, because the Ministry for Tax has problems when paying 3 years later the films that have been made 3 years beforehand, okay? In other countries in Europe it's resolved, but in our country it's not. And that generates a problem, the problem that we're explaining to you. So therefore there's a commitment with the Minister for Culture and the General Director of the IKA. We hope that next year we will have the first meeting in order to talk about how we are going to be able to make compatible and try to find the money in order to use both systems at the same time. It's not that much. We're talking about 100 million euros that quite obviously is a significant amount of money, but it's not an amount which is that important as, like, for example, that the Ministry for Tax has paid to the banks who are owners of the outer motorways, the black hole that they have of Madrid, and that had to be paid in order to take charge of those motorways on the outskirts of Madrid. We can't say, well, okay, we've not got any money, let's go to the states so that they can give us the money. That's what we've set forth in the law, and the law, no matter who passes the laws, have to be complied to. We also want to, and we say this, and we've said that face-to-face to the Minister for Culture, that more and more so, is that we've got to depend less and less upon the administration. We want a system like the French system, like the German system, like the Nordic systems, where the public authority obviously has a lot to say, but we can't be permanently going through the security control of the Minister for Culture in the Plaza del Rey to talk about this. We're adults, we're mature, we're veterans really in this kind of work, and that encourages us to come together to carry out this effort. One of the most interesting experiences that we have lived in the last few months is the experience of Catalonia, where through what we've always called the cultural scent, that is to say, at the end of the day, they've managed to achieve that the Catalan government sets a tax that has to be paid by the telecommunications companies in order to finance cinema and audiovisual products that are generated in Catalonia. I think that's a good example. I think it's a good example that, and when we say we want to be less dependent, that's what we mean. That is to say, we want, just like in other countries, we want the economic system, the industrial system, to be clear, to be very clear, in order to not suffer any political insecurity. Now I would like Raymond to explain what that proposal and that law that they have in his country. But I would like to say something so that you can realize what I mean. There are families whose existence as a family will depend upon whether the ministry finds the money or not. You might say, you're exaggerating, and I'm saying no. Ladies and gentlemen, many of the productions that the Spanish producers have made and that have to be bought, they've mortgaged themselves, asked for a second mortgage in the house that they live in. In many occasions, It's not the first mortgage. When the house collapses and the bank keeps it, this brings about such a drama within the family that in many occasions the marriage separates, and I could give you several examples of this because we gave more importance to the film that we wanted to make than to the house in which we lived in, the whole family with our kids. So therefore, it's important, and for me, that those repercussions are more important than economic statistics and economic figures. For me, that's more important than not reducing by a thousandth the deficit that the Spanish state has, that on the other hand continues to grow, as the surveys and statistics seem to be telling us. I would just like to simply say something before Raimon, the influence of seeing over there, excuse me, of seeing him on the other side or in front of me. I would like to say something that I firmly believe. Accounting is used by man, not man for accounting, okay? And I say man, I can say woman, it's exactly the same. Human beings are not made to make the accounting system happy. The accounting system has to provide the producers, men or women, and the production companies sufficient in order to be able to work. And now, Ramon, please, and then I can have a drink, to tell us what they've done in Catalonia vis-a-vis financing. Hi, good morning. The truth in Catalonia, we are, and especially from PROA, the federation that includes the 5 associations of producers, we are very happy because we can already say that in a few days' time or in a few weeks' time, the law will be passed of the audiovisual tax. It got into the parliament in the month of July, an ample majority was in favour of it. We know that it will be passed because this same majority have confirmed that they're going to back it, and it's going through an urgent transaction period, so therefore we can say that in a couple of weeks it'll be passed. All of this stems from, goes back a couple of years. It didn't happen from one day to the next. It doesn't happen that quickly. It's been a very costly journey, but we hope that it's been worthwhile. We'll see. As of 2008, 2009 in Catalonia, as you may well imagine and as you well know, there were some strong, heavy cuts, just like in the rest of Spain and the rest of Europe. There were very heavy cuts on the budget, and the people that suffer this in the department and in the culture, the departments of culture at different levels. This happened in a year where it was horrible, where there weren't only money cuts, but it was like in 2011, it was enormous, and where we producers spoke to the president and we said, well, listen, the situation was absolutely unbearable. All of our sources of income and Catalonian TV were going through a horrible moment in time, and as was being announced for the budget for 2011 and 2012, much less than half of what we had in the previous years. So therefore we were asked that they did believe in the sector, that it was horrible and awful what we were living through over in the previous year. So therefore we wanted a very creative sort of proposal, and we went and we thought over things. We wanted what it meant to have a creative proposal and submit a proposal with a proposal that the money didn't come out directly from the government's budget. And normally that's the case when they ask for a creative proposal. And we were trying to detect who could invest in the audiovisual sector. We're not talking about cinema. We always think about audiovisual, but I think that the lines of action are for cinema above all, but also for TV fiction and for animation and documentaries. And in this sense, the first thing that was quite clear in our minds is that we didn't want to propose any use of any tax or any proposal that will directly hinder the consumers. We are in a moment where the consumers already pays sufficient taxes. And if we talk about helping the audiovisual sector, these are measures that are normally not too popular, and we also thought that it wasn't fair, and we detected who it could be, and we realized that it was something that we all know, which I believe, is that there are operators that for many years are making an enormous amount of money thanks to the audiovisual sector. We saw a study, a European study, where it confirms that 70% of the business of European business, there's an legal or an illegal downloading of European audiovisual products. So therefore we believe that quite logically who we should ask to be accountable for this should be the operators. And plus we thought it's a question of justice, because we've talked about piracy quite a lot in the last few years. We are being completely this bad custom of doing this is hindering us, and other countries are doing things in order to stop it. And this country, unfortunately, regrettably, very few measures are being taken in order to resolve this problem. So therefore, we thought it was a measure that had a triple sense to it, did not act directly against the citizen. We want the measure to be able to help us, and then also to be paid for by the people that took benefit of it. So therefore, what we've tried to make quite clearly, at a political level, we've been working with the Department for Culture and the government in our region. This has a lot of pros and cons. We've had to resolve a few minor details, but we've finally given shape to all of this thanks to the Department of Economy and Culture in our government. We have a tax which charges 20 cents per line of data, not telephone line. We insist upon this because we always give the example that the poor lady or man who has very little income and so on and so forth and has a telephone line, they're not going to be taxed. But it wouldn't be paid by this person, it would be paid the operators who provide service. These are lines of data that are directly those that we see that take full benefit of our productions. And this is 20 cents, which means of €1. And this means that it would increase the budget that the Department of Culture of the Catalan government would increase between 20 and 21 million per year, the amounts that are provided for the audiovisual sector. And this isn't something, well, we're very happy about it. It's not something that we would maintain the level that we achieved in the previous years, and this would be added, and this is very important, to the budget that they already received from the cultural department. The government won't stop investing, but we would add those 20 million to what we already had before. And in the last year, I can tell you that it wasn't too much. We're talking only about 5 to 7 million euros. So therefore, this allows that the Catalonian Center of Production, which is a center that we've managed to have to achieve certain relevance and a certain volume of work in the last few years, to a certain extent, we'll be able to continue with our volume of production and the quality that we've achieved so far. Well, there's another press conference at 1 o'clock here, so therefore let's try to concentrate everything that we have to say. It may seem that the fact that things are okay, it's not that we're going, hey, everything's fantastic. Some things are okay, and there are other things where we're very critical because we have still not finished resolving all of those little details. The VAT of the 21% continues to be, and it doesn't seem that it's going to drop. Fiscal write-offs is one of the great measures. The reform of cinema and Spanish audiovisuals sector we have to give it further drive, because the limitation of 3 million euros with the percentage of how much you can write off, we're not resolving things there too either. A couple more things. One is going to be explained by Carlos Juarez, and another that I will leave in order to complete my intervention. There are things that depend upon us, or part of us. We have to be self-critical. I think one of the greatest critiques that we receive quite often is the two big production areas are Madrid and Barcelona, and nevertheless in our country, in Spain, there's a production also in Galicia, in the Basque Country, in Andalusia, and another one in Valencia, and all of those, they have difficulties to access the size of the pie, shall we say, of contents that the TVs have and aid that will be provided. Carlos will explain this to us. Well, I think we should congratulate ourselves in the Basque cinema. We got 4 cinemas that are films that are in the competition. We've got films also in the Sitges Film Festival. But to congratulate ourselves vis-a-vis the films doesn't agree with the success that supposedly at a financing level there are films that quite possibly, independent of the quality because they're in these official sections, may have a greater audience if Spanish cinema would have been there from the beginning or from the outset of those projects. I'm talking about the point of view, the territorial point of view of the Basque Country. This is a complaint that's always been made of centralization of Spanish cinema to a certain extent. The state is a group of citizens where we're all present and we participate and we pay our taxes. We have an autonomous and a public institution, TV, in the Basque government that is supposedly supporting and backing our films. And the Basque Country is the pioneer of the Kimubat catalog, where an enormous amount of directors that are now in the official section, and to a certain extent we were very successful. We're having people in the Oscars, for example, where the Spaniards went, and we're very proud to have directors at the Oscar Awards. So therefore it's quite curious to see that those films of those directors quite don't have the participation of the state TV channels. And from my point of view, we have carried out a study, and the truth is that the whole of the Spanish TV participation is 20% of the whole. And this makes us think. This means that from the point of view of the difficulty of making a film, it's difficult to make a film from Madrid. Well, imagine from the Basque Country, it's even much more difficult. So therefore, what I can ask is that allow us to develop our cinema from the state standpoint, we people who want to live here, okay? And I think that's one of the things that we will have to work upon jointly with the ministry and with we ourselves, we the producers, to see what solutions we can come to. And I said at the beginning that was the first time that the press conference wasn't done jointly with Spanish TV. And there's a reason for this. And the reason is, and I would like to present now, and if possibly Spanish TV would have been sitting here on the panel, it would have been a bit more costly. Many of us support the arrival of private TV from our production companies or simply as workers of public TV. We wanted and we believed that the system had to complement itself with public TV and private TV. It's indecent and it's immoral, the situation that public TVs find themselves in our country. We have to rectify and correct this, because otherwise we will end with a heritage which belongs to all of us in benefit of strictly commercial interests of the duopoly of private TVs that exist in Spain. We want to give all of the importance that that issue has, because it has a lot of importance as citizens and obviously as producers. We can't leave in ruin or in economic disaster with a criterion which are absolutely surreal to the public TVs and especially Spanish television, Televisión Española. We hope that in the next few months you will be able to see and share this we will hold some campaigns in favor of public television channel. And what we can't have is something that is the heritage of all citizens in our country, that which should complement the profit and loss account of interests of commercial companies, be in the conditions it is in. That's what we're saying now, albeit we've been thinking about this for many years, because if the president of the corporation would have been here like last year, well, quite possibly he would feel bothered. Does that mean that things with Spanish Televisión Española are going very well? No, they're going as well as possible, but they're not perfect. For example, we're very concerned of the disappearance as a Teledeporte, the sports channel, and its merger with Channel 2. We can't have that the only channel, cultural channel that exists in Spain, the only channel that projects quite normally Spanish TV and European cinema, your Spanish and European cinema practically every day now, has to take on sports with a reduction in possible hours on the grid for cultural programming. We will ask public television so that the cultural hours that disappear from Channel 2 should be included into Channel 1. We think it's a formula which is possible so that the system does not deteriorate even more so, because otherwise we will be left only with commercial initiative TV channels. It is necessary, and we believe, for this to be so. And secondly, we can't be talking about the call for holding a conference when normally the entities that work within the industry of Spanish cinema, producers, distributors, exhibitors, banks, financing companies, thinkers, we don't even normally talk to each other. There's no continued relationship. It doesn't exist. We propose, and we don't want to be more than anyone else. We are a platform in which we include producers, distributors, exhibitors, television channels, everyone all of us who are incorporated into the system. The Spanish audiovisual system has a problem. How to distribute its competencies. Culture is with culture. Economic issues have to do with the tax department. Industrial and technology issues in industry and information society. Political and media are in the vice presidency of the government at present in that department. But above all of these, there's nothing that will close the loop. So therefore, every time we start up an initiative, we only go halfway. We get stuck halfway. When there's money for cinema and the Minister for Culture, the tax department doesn't give it to TV. And when the TV has it, they don't have it in the ICAA. That doesn't work. And with that doesn't work, I'm going to finish because Irene is asking me. Thank you. Questions? Why isn't Spanish TV, the representative of Spanish TV on the panel? And I would like to know, you've talked about 32.5 million that the tax department has provided. What we've got written down, I think it's, my colleagues, is it 30 million? I'm not too sure. The previous call of the films of 2011, there was an extra 2.5 million euros, so therefore, and that could contribute by the ICAA to those three. So therefore, there's still 6.5 that Ramon said to achieve the figure of all of the films in 2012, which would be 38, 39 million. The 100 million that you talked about, Mr. Colom, those 100 million to close our accounts with the Ministry for Culture, did they encompass 2013 and 2014? Does it include the 39 million of 2012? 2012, 2013, 2014, and the new system. So in those 100 million, we have to take out 39 million of 2012, yes. And then I would like to know whether the FAPAE is going to support the reading of the manifest that will be held done here on Saturday by Manuel Gutierrez Aragon. A priori we are, but as we don't know what the manifest says because it's not been told to us and they've not called us for any specific call, and we've not explained where the initiative stems from, and the idea that obviously perhaps we might still be able to do it perfectly, but the idea that we had before, and in fact we started to talk halfway through the month of August, was to sit down the different parties that are involved in our industry to talk about specific things in order to try to resolve them. Sorry, I can't hear the question. Well, with Spanish TV, no. Well, we thought that we had they and as well as us could have much more freedom to be able to present the subject matter that we have. They are going to hold another press conference. Fernando, what is it? Friday or Thursday? Oh, it's going to be on Friday. But it's not because we're enemies all of a sudden. Sorry, we can't hear the question. Please, and I imagine you reflected upon why in 1 year where the cinema industry, according to the data, is bankrupt, it's the best year of market share. How can we reflect upon this from the production standpoint of that situation? There's a reflection which I think is very simple. I think we have to change our criteria. And I believe that it's much fairer that we think about the number of the audience that goes, and then how much we make at the box office. I'm trying to talk about how much money is invested in cinema and to find other types of yardsticks in order to allow us to combine things. To start off, one of the issues that is still pending to talk with the ICA is a certain classification. According to last year's statistics, and this is off the top of my head, there's 230 titles that were produced, that are not really that amount, because what we bear in mind in the IKA is that when you register the shooting of the film, but it's not the same, the films that have our commercial premiere vis-a-vis those films that are much smaller with documentaries and with minority co-productions, Spanish co-production, we would have to differentiate all of these and classify them. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, the number of films that make it to the cinema screens with a commercial standpoint in mind are about 40 or 50, and that we could still be discussed. So therefore, the first point is that, as I was saying, what we're saying is that this year we're happy because we've managed to achieve that popular type cinema. This isn't a perfect formula and it's not a magical formula. What we are saying, however, is that right next to that, and there's a whole series of industrial problems that the government has to help us to resolve or to solve. And I also said there are times that the Ministry for Culture is not the best department in order to resolve industrial problems. And just another point that I would like to add, Ramon has said there is a general crisis, but when he talked about the advertising in Spanish TV, there's no economic crisis of the private TV, so therefore we're saying that it's all well and good that there should be all types of cinema. The share is about 30 or 40 in France. Perhaps there's more films. That popular cinema that talked about as going quite well. But we think that we can't get stuck in Spanish cinema with 20 or 30 titles of films and all of them be popular, similar type cinema. So therefore, many films that we see this festival would not fit in there, in that type of cinema. So I think it's correct that it should be made. It's commercial cinema. Commercial cinema which is directed and aimed at achieving economic profits. And that's good, that's correct, and it's good for production and for everyone, but we can't only make that type of cinema. We can't dedicate ourselves on making 30 films a year and all of them exactly the same in the same line. I think that we have to provide plurality, and up until now, the public TVs have participated in other types of films, new directors, and much riskier co-productions with Latin America and so on and so forth. I think that's the way we should be going.
No, yo quería hacer tres preguntas.
3 questions. One, the first has to do with the FAPAE. Is it healthy? AMA was extinguished now. We're going to talk to the government, so on and so forth. The question is to ask, what level of representation does the FAPAE have with these evident divisions that are taking place, and whether anything is being done to close or to heal that scar? That's the first question, or heal the wound. The second has to do with this hard head-on attack of private TVs and defending public TV. I imagine that the FAPAE is aware of the fact that the Telecinco is making the big box office hits here in Spain. I'm under the expression that there's a, well, to be happy that things are going so well, because I'm not too sure they are. But on the other hand, to go against, at the end of the day, Mortadelo and Filobón is on Antena 3, on the private TV channels. And the third question has to do with the conversations with the government. I see that you're stressing the idea of the new model beforehand to change and the what the yields are going to be, and as appeared in the committees, fiscal exemption. Well, for example, we'll forget it. If we don't forget about it, what weight do they have? The question that has been asked here, year after year in this room, is what percentage does the FAPAE want of fiscal exemptions? It has varied. We started with 40 or 32 and so on and so forth, and I'm not too sure now that the government has announced what it's announced, it's going to vary. I remember last year here, we gave the data because the mixed committee did make a summary at the end of the day. Conclusions were drawn from FAPAE. I remember we asked that fiscal reduction shouldn't be less than 30% in those meetings, if I recall correctly. It was approved and passed with the commitment of the rest of the people that form part of that committee, the different departments of the government that Ramon mentioned before, that it should not be less than 25%, but they've not come through with the goods. So therefore, in that mixed commission, we were talking about reducing VAT, but they have not complied to it. It's not that we renounce to an exemption. We asked for more than 30 so we could pay the surrounding countries. The commitment was that it wouldn't be under 25%, and we are at 18 or 20%, depending, and the rest I will let Ramon say what he thinks. Well, I think you're always thinking negatively, and I'm saying that to start off with. The FAPAE, our federation, is very healthy. That's a FAPAE. The same thing happens to us as happens to other confederations, in which as well there are opposing interests, and there are interests that are contradictory and of competition that exists among some of its members. And for the president of FAPAE that I inherited by Pedro Perez, he had a list of things that I thought were very good, but then subsequently, when the waves get really high, they hit you in the face, or really big, they hit you in the face, like just Carlos has just said. Sometimes they contradict what other associations think, and in FAPAE, for example, we talk about this, we try to discuss it in depth, but I think it's quite healthy, despite the fact that now and again you might hear us screaming, but on our streets. In the case of AMA, for example, AMA, this has been transcribed here, they have the complete right to leave, but before doing that, I asked them, please, to sit down with us to talk about what, according to them, are the problems that exist. This discussion didn't exist, and I want to repeat it again. We're open to talk with them, and we are open for them coming back. We wouldn't like we would love them to come back with us. I don't think I can say things any clearer than that. And also the families, and in the newspapers, and also in companies, sometimes there are differences between the different departments. TVs, well, as regards to TVs, we're not shooting against private TV channels. I'm not shooting against them, and we recognize publicly the success of their films, but above all, of their launching campaigns. Hey, we say chapeau, we take our hat off to them, and we congratulate them as we've done privately and now in public. So there's no inconvenience here. They generate other problems. Like, for example, the volume and the promotion that some of the films have, that other Spanish films with the same possibilities, without that volume of promotion work that they do, don't manage to achieve a commercial career. But in comparison, for example, a viewer, my theory is when a film is launched with 700 copies and an advertising campaign and a budget, the viewers say, this is the one we've got to see. Perfect. We think it's fantastic that it's been in favor of Spanish cinema. But it creates problems in the others. We don't recriminate them for this, so I'm just simply saying this by stating, just to state the fact. But there's a good relationship. But what I'm saying is that they, who did use the support of the industry and production in order to launch their channels in 1990, now they should also defend a status for public television and not be in that type of constant persecution that they're carrying out. If they do it because they do it, if they don't do it, why don't they do it? Well, we can't, that's not clear. We defend that there should be 4 different television poles in Spain. Antena 3, Telecinco, Canal Plus, Telefónica, and public television, Televisión Española. If we don't have, the model is crippled, and the citizens will suffer for this. It's as clear as day. So therefore, we want to include public television in the conversations with the government. Not everything is going well with public television. Public television, and they have really been hit hard, and especially in the reform of Maria Teresa Bernaldez de la Vega. That is a right, that's awful, to detain all the promotion system of sports, sponsored programs, but to prohibit it to the sector, to the cultural sector. That's the way it is. So therefore, we want to resolve that problem. We need to resolve that, amongst other things, because, so that Spanish television can promote Spanish cinema and Spanish culture in equal conditions as the private televisions. We want Spanish television in certain points to operate in equal conditions with the commercial channels and not in a deficit situation. I've answered your 3 questions, yes. Ramon, as regards to the private channels, I think there's the need of the independent producer and private television. It's unviable. For example, the independent production couldn't use that talent. Ocho apellidos vascos. We couldn't explain if the independent producer hadn't have gone, worked with Diego José, with Borja Covera, with Color Zua. It's necessary to have independent production and to address that the success is going to be directed by private televisions. It's quite naive. That also occurs in America. You've got the independent and the majors, and when they know that they need each other mutually, to address that they should confront each other on this, it's a bit naive. We need them and they need us.
Una pregunta más.
One more question, yes. Are there any further questions?
No.
No? Well, okay. Thank you very much for your attention.